HOA president stormed toward us with fury in her eyes. My 12-year-old sister sat in her wheelchair, feeding ducks with a rare smile on her face. It was the first time she had smiled since the car crash that killed our parents and shattered her legs. The woman pointed at my sister and shouted that we had to leave immediately. Then everything changed when a man in a gray suit stepped forward. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The sun hung low in the autumn sky, casting golden rays across Riverside Park. I pushed Emma's wheelchair carefully along the paved path, her small hands gripping the armrests tightly. My sister was only 12 years old, but she had endured more pain than most people experience in a lifetime. 3 months ago, a drunk driver had crashed into our family car. Mom and Dad didn't survive. Emma's legs were shattered, and the doctors said she might never walk again. I was 24, fresh out of college, and suddenly responsible for raising my little sister. The grief threatened to drown us both, but I had to stay strong for Emma. She had stopped smiling after the accident. She barely spoke anymore. The therapist suggested fresh air and nature might help her heal emotionally, so every evening, I brought her to Riverside Park. It was the only place where I occasionally saw a flicker of light return to her empty eyes. "Look, Emma," I whispered, pointing toward the duck pond. "The ducklings are swimming with their mother." Emma's gaze followed my finger, and for a brief moment, the corners of her lips lifted slightly. My heart swelled with hope. These tiny victories meant everything to me. We settled on a bench near the pond. I had brought bread crumbs, and Emma tossed them toward the water with weak, trembling hands. The ducks swam closer, and I heard the faintest giggle escape from my sister's lips. Tears pricked my eyes. This was the first time she had laughed since the accident. "You like the ducks, don't you?" I asked softly, kneeling beside her wheelchair. She nodded, her brown eyes still fixed on the water. "They're happy," she whispered. "I wish I could be happy like them." My throat tightened. "You will be, sweetheart. I promise. We'll get through this together." Just as I was about to hand her more bread crumbs, a sharp voice cut through the peaceful atmosphere like a knife. "Excuse me. What do you think you're doing?" I turned to see a woman marching toward us with the fury of a hurricane. She was in her late 50s, with perfectly styled blonde hair, designer sunglasses perched on her nose, and a clipboard clutched in her manicured hands. Her face was twisted in anger, and her eyes blazed with righteous indignation. "I'm sorry," I said, standing up slowly. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, there's a problem," she snapped, jabbing a finger toward Emma. "Feeding the ducks is strictly prohibited in this park. Can't you read the signs?" I glanced around. There was a small sign near the entrance, barely visible behind some overgrown bushes. But surely this woman could see that Emma was just a child in a wheelchair, trying to find a moment of happiness. "I'm sorry, I didn't see the sign," I said calmly. "We'll stop right away." "That's not good enough," the woman barked. "Rules are rules. This is a residential community park maintained by the Riverside Homeowners Association. I'm Linda Patterson, the HOA president, and I don't tolerate rule breakers." Emma shrank back in her wheelchair, her eyes wide with fear. The bread crumbs fell from her hands and scattered on the ground. My protective instincts kicked in immediately. "Ma'am, with all due respect, my sister just wanted to feed the ducks," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's been through a terrible accident, and this is one of the few things that makes her smile." Linda crossed her arms, her expression cold and unmoved. "I don't care about your sob story. Rules exist for a reason. If I let one person break them, everyone will think they can do whatever they want." My blood began to boil, but I forced myself to remain calm for Emma's sake. "We understand. We'll leave." "Not so fast," Linda said, stepping closer. She looked down at Emma with disgust. This park has specific regulations about who can use it. Only residents of the Riverside community are allowed access. Do you live here? No, I admitted. We live in the apartment complex 2 blocks away. But this is a public park. Anyone can come here. Linda's lips curled into a cruel smile. Actually, you're wrong. This park was built and is maintained by the HOA. It's private property. Non-residents are not permitted. You need to leave immediately. Emma started to cry softly. The sound broke my heart into a million pieces. I knelt beside her wheelchair and wiped her tears gently. It's okay, Emma. We'll go somewhere else, I whispered. But I like it here, she sobbed. The ducks are nice. Why is that lady so mean? Linda overheard and scoffed. I'm not mean. I'm enforcing the rules that keep this community safe and beautiful. If you don't leave within the next 5 minutes, I'm calling the police. Rage surged through my veins. This heartless woman was threatening to call the police on a disabled child who just wanted to watch some ducks. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling with anger. You would really call the police on a 12-year-old girl in a wheelchair? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. What kind of person are you? The kind of person who follows the law, Linda shot back. And if you don't like it, take it up with the mayor. Oh wait, you can't, because Mayor Richards always supports the HOA. We donate generously to his campaigns. She turned on her heel and walked away, already pulling out her phone. I watched her go, my heart pounding with fury and helplessness. Emma was crying harder now, her thin shoulders shaking. I want to go home, she whimpered. I don't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to give Linda the satisfaction of seeing us leave, but I couldn't let Emma suffer any more trauma. I began pushing her wheelchair back toward the park entrance, my mind racing with angry thoughts. We hadn't made it more than 20 feet when I heard someone calling out. Wait. Please wait. I turned to see an elderly man hurrying toward us. He was dressed in a simple gray suit, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Behind him was a younger man in a security uniform. I'm so sorry about what just happened, the elderly man said, slightly out of breath. I witnessed the entire exchange from across the park. May I speak with you for a moment? I was exhausted and emotionally drained, but something about this man's gentle demeanor made me pause. Who are you? I asked cautiously. My name is Robert Richards, he said, extending his hand. I'm the mayor of this town. My eyes widened in shock. The mayor? The same mayor Linda had just mentioned with such confidence. I come to this park every evening to walk and clear my mind, Mayor Richards continued. I saw what Mrs. Patterson did, and I want you to know that her behavior was completely unacceptable. But she said you support the HOA, I said, confused. She said this park is private property. The mayor's expression darkened. Mrs. Patterson has been spreading that lie for months. The truth is, this park was purchased by the city 3 years ago. It's public property, open to everyone. The HOA has no authority here whatsoever. My jaw dropped. But she threatened to call the police. Let her try, Mayor Richards said firmly. I'll personally ensure that any officer who responds knows the truth. In fact, I'd like to speak with Mrs. Patterson right now. Would you be willing to stay for a few more minutes? I looked down at Emma. Her tears had stopped, and she was staring at the mayor with curiosity. Emma, do you want to stay and see what happens? I asked gently. She nodded slowly. Will the mean lady get in trouble? Mayor Richards knelt down beside her wheelchair, his eyes soft with compassion. Young lady, no one should have treated you the way Mrs. Patterson did. I'm going to make sure she understands that her behavior was wrong. Would you like to help me? Emma's eyes widened. How can I help? By being brave and telling me what happened in your own words, the mayor said. Can you do that? Emma nodded again, this time with more confidence. I felt a surge of pride watching my little sister find her voice. The mayor stood and spoke into his radio. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived at the park, along with Linda Patterson, who looked supremely confident as she marched toward us. "Mayor Richards," she exclaimed with fake enthusiasm. "What a pleasant surprise. I was just explaining to these officers that we have trespassers in the park who refuse to leave." "That's interesting, Linda," the mayor said coolly. "Because I was just explaining to them that you've been lying about park ownership and harassing innocent citizens." Linda's face went pale. "Excuse me. This park is public property, Linda. It has been for 3 years. The HOA has no authority to kick anyone out. You know this because I personally sent you a letter explaining the situation when the city purchased the land." Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That letter must have gotten lost. I never received it." "That's strange," Mayor Richard said, pulling out his phone. "Because I have the certified mail receipt right here showing that you signed for it on March 15, 3 years ago." One of the police officers stepped forward. "Ma'am, is this true? Have you been falsely claiming authority over public property?" Linda's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. "I'm the HOA president. I have every right to maintain standards in this community." "You have no rights over public land," the officer said firmly. "And threatening to call the police on citizens who are lawfully using a public park could be considered harassment." "Harassment?" Linda sputtered. "I was just trying to enforce the rules." "What rules, Linda?" Mayor Richards asked, his voice growing stern. "The rules that only exist in your imagination. The rules that let you bully and intimidate people who don't meet your standards." Emma suddenly spoke up, her small voice cutting through the tension. "She made me cry. She said mean things about my wheelchair. She said I wasn't allowed to feed the ducks because I'm broken." Everyone fell silent. Emma's words hung in the air like an accusation. Linda's face turned from red to white. "I never said she was broken." Linda protested weakly. "You looked at me like I was garbage," Emma said, her voice stronger now. "You made me feel bad for being in a wheelchair. My mommy and daddy died, and my legs don't work anymore, and all I wanted was to watch the ducks. Why are you so mean?" Tears streamed down Emma's face, but these weren't tears of fear or sadness. These were tears of anger and hurt. She was finally expressing the pain that had been bottled up inside her for months. I placed my hand on her shoulder, giving her silent support. The officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Even Linda seemed shaken by Emma's words. Mayor Richards knelt beside Emma again. "Emma, I want you to know something very important. There is nothing broken about you. You are brave, and strong, and you have every right to enjoy this park just like anyone else. Mrs. Patterson was wrong to treat you that way, and I'm going to make sure it never happens again." He stood and turned to Linda, his expression grave. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm officially putting you on notice. If I receive one more complaint about you harassing park visitors, I will pursue legal action against you personally and against the HOA. Do you understand?" Linda's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is outrageous. I have rights too." "Yes, you do," one of the officers said. "But those rights don't include bullying disabled children or lying about your authority. Consider this your warning. If we get called out here again because of you, you'll be charged with harassment and trespassing." Linda looked around at the faces surrounding her. There was no sympathy, no support. She realized she had lost this battle completely. "Fine," she spat. "But the HOA will hear about this. We contribute significant funds to this community." "The HOA's contributions are appreciated," Mayor Richard said coldly. "But they don't buy you the right to abuse people. Now please leave before I have you escorted out for disturbing the peace." Linda shot me one final venomous glare before storming off toward the parking lot. I watched her go, feeling a mix of satisfaction and lingering anger. After she left, Mayor Richards turned to me with an apologetic smile. "I'm truly sorry you and your sister had to experience that. Mrs. Patterson has been a problem for quite some time, but we've never had concrete evidence of her harassment until today." "What will happen to her?" I asked. "I'll be filing a formal complaint with the HOA board," the mayor said. "And I'll be recommending her removal as president. Additionally, I'm going to have new signs posted throughout the park making it crystal clear that this is public property and that everyone is welcome." He looked down at Emma. "And Emma, I want to make sure you feel comfortable coming back here whenever you want. In fact, I'd like to arrange something special for you. How would you feel about a dedicated duck feeding area with a special wheelchair-accessible platform?" Emma's eyes lit up with genuine joy for the first time in months. "Really? Just for feeding the ducks?" "Just for feeding the ducks," Mayor Richards confirmed. "And I'll make sure there's a bench there with your name on it, so everyone knows that Emma is always welcome in this park." Emma burst into tears again, but this time they were tears of happiness. She reached out and grabbed the mayor's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." I felt my own tears falling as I watched this powerful moment. After months of darkness and pain, someone had finally shown my sister genuine kindness and compassion. Mayor Richard spent another 20 minutes with us, talking to Emma about her favorite animals and promising to look into making other parks more accessible for people with disabilities. He gave me his personal phone number and told me to call if anyone ever harassed us again. As we finally left the park that evening, Emma was humming softly to herself. It was a sound I hadn't heard since before the accident. My heart felt lighter than it had in months. Over the next few weeks, true to his word, Mayor Richards followed through on every promise. A beautiful duck feeding platform was installed at the park, complete with a bronze plaque that read, "Emma's Place, where everyone belongs." New signs were posted at every entrance stating that Riverside Park was public property and open to all citizens. The construction of Emma's Place became a community event. Local volunteers showed up to help build the platform. Children painted colorful murals of ducks and flowers on the surrounding walls. A local carpenter donated his time to create a beautiful wooden bench with Emma's name carved into it. Watching the community come together filled my heart with gratitude. On the day of the grand opening, over 200 people gathered at the park. Emma sat in her wheelchair at the front of the crowd, wearing her favorite yellow dress. She was nervous but excited. Mayor Richard stood beside her with a large ceremonial ribbon stretched across the entrance to the new platform. "Ladies and gentlemen," the mayor announced through a microphone. "Today we celebrate not just a new addition to our park, but a reminder of what our community stands for. We stand for inclusion. We stand for kindness. We stand for protecting those who cannot always protect themselves." The crowd applauded loudly. I saw tears in many eyes as the mayor continued. "Emma, would you do us the honor of cutting the ribbon?" he asked, handing her a large pair of scissors. With trembling hands, Emma cut through the ribbon. The crowd erupted in cheers. Children rushed forward to explore the new platform, and Emma was immediately surrounded by well-wishers. People brought bags of bread crumbs and bird seed to celebrate the occasion. The duck pond became a festival of laughter and joy. But not everyone was happy about the changes. I later learned that Linda Patterson had tried to rally support among other HOA members to fight the mayor's decision. She organized a meeting where she claimed the city had overstepped its authority and that the park improvements were a waste of taxpayer money. Only 3 people showed up to her meeting. The rest of the HOA board had already voted to remove her as president and distance themselves from her toxic behavior. One board member, a woman named Margaret Chen, publicly apologized for not standing up to Linda sooner. "We allowed her to bully people because we were afraid of conflict," Margaret admitted in a town hall meeting. "We told ourselves she was just passionate about rules and standards. But the truth is, we enabled her cruelty. We are deeply sorry," especially to young Emma and her brother. The local newspaper ran a story about Linda Patterson's harassment and her removal as HOA president. The article detailed her history of bullying tactics and discriminatory behavior toward park visitors who didn't meet her standards. The community outcry was swift and fierce. People came forward with dozens of similar stories about how Linda had mistreated them. A single mother named Rosa shared how Linda had called the police on her 7-year-old son for riding his bike on the park path. An elderly veteran named Mr. Johnson described how Linda had banned him from the park because his service dog wasn't on her approved breeds list. A young couple revealed that Linda had harassed them for having a picnic on the grass, claiming they were lowering property values. Each story painted a picture of a woman who had abused her small amount of power to make others miserable. The more stories that emerged, the angrier the community became. People started a petition demanding that Linda face legal consequences for her years of harassment. Within days, over 3,000 signatures were collected. The HOA board issued a public apology and implemented new policies to prevent abuse of authority. Linda herself was required to complete community service hours and attend sensitivity training as part of a settlement to avoid legal charges. The city attorney, working with Mayor Richards, presented Linda with two options: face criminal charges for harassment and filing false police reports, or accept a settlement agreement. The agreement required her to complete 200 hours of community service at a disability resource center, attend mandatory sensitivity training, issue a public written apology to Emma and all the other people she had harassed, and pay a fine of $5,000 that would go directly to funding accessibility improvements in city parks. Linda initially refused, claiming she had done nothing wrong. She hired an expensive lawyer who threatened to sue the city for defamation. But when the lawyer reviewed the evidence including witness statements, video footage from park security cameras, and the certified mail receipt proving Linda knew the park was public property, he advised her to take the settlement. The day Linda showed up for her first community service shift at the Disability Resource Center, Emma and I happened to be there for Emma's weekly support group meeting. Linda's face turned pale when she saw us. She quickly looked away and hurried to report to the supervisor. For the next 6 months, Linda had to help people with disabilities navigate daily challenges. She assisted wheelchair users with accessibility issues. She organized donation drives for adaptive equipment. She listened to stories of struggle and perseverance from people she had previously dismissed or looked down upon. I watched from a distance as the experience slowly changed her. The arrogance faded from her expression. The cruel set of her mouth softened. She was learning empathy the hard way, forced to see the humanity in people she had treated as less than. One day, near the end of her community service requirement, Linda approached me in the center's parking lot. I tensed immediately, ready to protect Emma from any more cruelty. "Please," Linda said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just want to apologize. Not because the court ordered me to, but because I truly am sorry." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. Instead, I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. "I was wrong," Linda continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was so wrong about everything. I thought I was protecting my community, but I was really just a bully hiding behind rules. What I did to Emma was unforgivable. She's just a child who lost her parents and nearly lost her ability to walk, and I treated her like she was nothing. I treated so many people like they were nothing." Emma, who had been quiet beside me, suddenly spoke up. "Why were you so mean?" Linda knelt down to Emma's level, her expensive skirt getting dirty on the asphalt. "I was scared," she admitted. "I was scared of losing control. I was scared of things changing. I was scared of people who were different from me because they reminded me that I'm not as special or important as I wanted to believe. And instead of dealing with my fear in a healthy way, I took it out on innocent people. Especially people who were vulnerable, like you." "That was really bad," Emma said simply. "It was," Linda agreed. "And I can't take it back. But I want you to know that you changed my life, Emma. Watching your courage and your strength, even when I was treating you terribly, it made me realize how small and petty I had become. "You're more of a person at 12 years old than I was at 55. Emma looked at me, silently asking what she should do. I gave her a small nod, letting her know the decision was hers. "I forgive you," Emma said finally. "But you have to promise to be nice to people from now on. Especially people who are different or who need help." Linda nodded, more tears falling. "I promise. And thank you, Emma. You didn't have to forgive me, but you did anyway. That's real strength." But the most beautiful change happened in Emma. With her new favorite spot in the park, she began to heal emotionally. Every evening, we visited Emma's place, and she fed the ducks with joy and laughter. Other children started joining her, and soon Emma had a group of friends who didn't care about her wheelchair or her scars. She started smiling again. She started talking about her dreams for the future. She worked harder in physical therapy, determined to prove the doctors wrong. And 6 months after that terrible encounter with Linda Patterson, Emma took her first assisted steps. I was there when it happened, cheering her on as she gripped the parallel bars and moved one foot forward, then the other. Tears of pride streamed down my face as my little sister defied the odds. "I did it," she cried out, her face glowing with triumph. "I took steps." The physical therapist was amazed. "Emma, you're incredible. This is remarkable progress." Emma's journey to walking again was not easy. There were days when the pain was so intense that she cried and wanted to give up. There were moments when her muscles refused to cooperate, when her legs felt like dead weight, when frustration overwhelmed her determination. But she never stopped trying. Her physical therapist, Dr. Sarah Martinez, became like family to us. She pushed Emma when she needed pushing and comforted her when she needed comfort. Dr. Martinez had worked with hundreds of patients, but she told me Emma was the most determined child she had ever seen. "Most kids her age would have given up months ago," Dr. Martinez said one afternoon while Emma rested between exercises. "But Emma has something special inside her. She has a reason to keep fighting." "What reason?" I asked, curious about her professional opinion. "Hope," Dr. Martinez said simply. After what happened at the park with the mayor, Emma realized that the world still has good people in it. She realized she's worth fighting for. That's powerful medicine. The day Emma took those first steps, Dr. Martinez called everyone in the therapy center to come witness the moment. Nurses, other therapists, patients, administrative staff, they all gathered around to cheer Emma on. When she completed her walk across the parallel bars, the entire room erupted in applause and tears. An elderly man in a wheelchair, a stroke survivor named Mr. Kowalski, rolled up to Emma afterward. "Young lady," he said in his thick accent, "you just inspired this old man to work harder. If you can do it, so can I." Emma's achievement made the local news. A reporter interviewed her about her recovery, and Emma used the opportunity to talk about the importance of accessible parks and standing up to bullies. The interview went viral online, and soon Emma was receiving messages of support from people all over the country. One message came from a teenage girl in California who had lost her legs in a surfing accident. She wrote, "Emma, watching your story gave me hope when I was ready to give up. Thank you for showing me that we can overcome anything." Another message came from a mother whose son had cerebral palsy. She wrote, "My son saw your interview and said, 'Mommy, if Emma can be brave, so can I.' You changed his life." Emma read every single message, and each one strengthened her resolve. She started keeping a journal where she wrote encouraging words to herself and others. One entry read, "Bad things happen to good people. Mean people exist. But kind people exist too, and they are stronger. I will be one of the kind people who makes the world better." That evening, we went to the park to celebrate. Emma insisted on using her walker instead of the wheelchair. It took us 20 minutes to make the short walk from the parking lot to Emma's place, but every step was a victory. When we arrived at the duck feeding platform, we found Mayor Richards waiting for us with a bouquet of flowers. A little bird told me that someone achieved something amazing today, he said with a warm smile. Emma beamed at him. I walked. Well, kind of. I used a walker, but I took real steps. That's absolutely wonderful, Emma, the mayor said, handing her the flowers. I'm so proud of you. You're an inspiration to everyone in this community. The mayor had brought something else too, a professional photographer to document Emma's first visit to the park with her walker. He wanted to create a display at City Hall showing Emma's journey from wheelchair to walker to inspire other people facing challenges. As the photographer took pictures, other park visitors noticed what was happening. Word spread quickly that this was Emma from Emma's Place, the girl who had stood up to the HOA bully. People started gathering around, offering congratulations and encouragement. A young mother with twin toddlers approached us. Are you Emma? She asked. When Emma nodded, the woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank you for making this park safe for my children. Before you, that awful HOA woman yelled at me for letting my kids play too loudly. She made me feel like a terrible mother. But now I can bring my babies here without fear. You did that. An elderly couple who had been married for 60 years came over holding hands. The husband said, we stopped coming to this park because that Patterson woman harassed us about our old car, lowering the tone of the parking lot. But we heard what happened, and we came back. This is our favorite place, and we have you to thank for reclaiming it. Story after story, person after person, they shared how Linda's reign of terror had affected them and how Emma's courage had freed them. Emma listened to each person with compassion and grace far beyond her years. As Emma fed the ducks that evening, using her walker for support, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. We had faced cruelty and heartbreak, but we had also discovered kindness and justice. Linda Patterson's attempt to break my sister's spirit had ultimately led to something beautiful, a community coming together to support a child in need. Emma would always carry the physical and emotional scars of the accident that took our parents. She would always remember the pain of losing them and the struggle to learn to walk again. But she would also remember the day a cruel woman tried to kick her out of a park, and how a kind mayor arrived at exactly the right time to stand up for what was right. Sometimes justice comes when you least expect it. Sometimes one person's courage to speak up can change everything. And sometimes, even in our darkest moments, there are people ready to fight for us. Linda Patterson learned that cruelty has consequences. Emma learned that she was stronger than she ever imagined. And I learned that even when the world seems impossibly dark, there are still people who will shine a light to guide you home. 3 years have passed since that autumn day in Riverside Park. Emma is now 15 years old and walks without assistance. She volunteers at a local disability rights organization and speaks to groups about accessibility and inclusion. The accident will always be a part of her story, but it doesn't define her anymore. As for Linda Patterson, she moved away from the community shortly after her removal as HOA president. I heard she sold her house and left town quietly, unable to face the shame of her actions. I don't know where she is now, and honestly, I don't care. She taught us an important lesson about standing up to bullies, and for that, I'm almost grateful for the encounter. Actually, I learned more about Linda's departure months later through Margaret Chen, the new HOA president. Margaret reached out to me to apologize again on behalf of the HOA and to share what had really happened. Linda didn't just leave because of shame, Margaret explained over coffee. Her entire life fell apart. Her husband filed for divorce, saying he couldn't stay married to someone who bullied disabled children. Her adult children stopped speaking to her. She lost her position on 3 different charity boards. Her closest friends distanced themselves from her. That seems harsh, I said, though part of me felt she deserved it. It gets worse, Margaret continued. She tried to get a job at several local companies, but her reputation preceded her. Nobody wanted to hire the woman who harassed a little girl in a wheelchair. She ended up having to move 3 states away to find work. Last I heard, she's working as a cashier at a grocery store. I thought about that for a long time. Linda had gone from being a powerful HOA president with influence and status to being completely ostracized from her community. Part of me felt satisfaction that justice had been served. But another part of me, the part that Emma had inspired, felt a twinge of sadness for how completely Linda's life had unraveled. "Do you think she learned anything?" I asked Margaret. "I hope so," Margaret replied. "I genuinely hope she's become a better person. But whether she has or hasn't, what matters is that our community learned something. We learned not to let people abuse power. We learned to speak up when we see injustice. We learned that every person deserves dignity and respect, regardless of their circumstances." Margaret's words stayed with me. The ripple effects of that one afternoon in the park continued to spread throughout our community. The HOA implemented new bylaws requiring board members to complete training on inclusion and accessibility. They created a community liaison position to handle complaints and ensure no one person could wield unchecked authority. They even started a scholarship fund for young people with disabilities, naming it the Emma Davis Courage Scholarship, in honor of my sister. Other neighborhoods in our city began adopting similar policies after hearing about what happened. Mayor Richards championed a citywide initiative to make all public spaces more accessible and welcoming. He often invited Emma to speak at council meetings and community events, where she shared her story and advocated for others who couldn't always advocate for themselves. Emma's confidence grew with each speaking engagement. The shy, traumatized girl who could barely speak after the accident transformed into a passionate advocate with a powerful voice. She joined the student council at her school and started a club focused on disability awareness and inclusion. One of Emma's proudest moments came when her school invited her to present at an assembly about overcoming adversity. She stood on stage with her walker, looking out at hundreds of students, and told her story without fear. "When that woman tried to kick me out of the park, she thought I was weak because I was in a wheelchair," Emma said, her voice clear and strong. "She thought she could bully me because I was vulnerable. But she was wrong. Being in a wheelchair didn't make me weak. Losing my parents didn't make me weak. What made me strong was refusing to let her cruelty define me." The auditorium erupted in applause. Students stood and cheered. Teachers wiped tears from their eyes. The principal told me afterward that Emma's speech was the most powerful presentation the school had ever hosted. But perhaps the most unexpected outcome of our ordeal came 2 years after the initial incident. Emma received a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note from Linda Patterson. "Mayor Richards remained a friend to our family. He attended Emma's high school graduation and continues to advocate for accessibility improvements throughout the city. The duck feeding platform he built became a beloved community gathering spot, and hundreds of families have enjoyed feeding the ducks at Emma's place. Every year on the anniversary of that fateful day, Emma and I return to the park with bread crumbs. We stand at Emma's place and remember how far we've come. We remember Mom and Dad, and we remember the moment when everything changed. The ducks still swim in the pond, happy and carefree. Children still laugh and play on the grass. And my sister still smiles as she watches the ducklings follow their mother across the water. That smile makes everything we've been through worthwhile. It reminds me that no matter how much cruelty exists in the world, kindness will always be stronger. Love will always triumph over hate. And justice, though sometimes delayed, will always find its way to those who deserve it." Linda Patterson tried to kick my injured sister out of the park, but the mayor arrived at the right time. He didn't just defend us that day, he gave Emma back her hope, her dignity, and her belief that the world could still be a good place. And in the end, that's all that matters. Not revenge, not punishment, but the restoration of hope to a broken heart. Emma's heart was shattered by tragedy, and it was healed by compassion. That's the real story. That's the lesson worth remembering. As the sun sets on another day at Riverside Park, I watch Emma toss bread crumbs to the ducks, her laughter echoing across the water. She's happy now. She's whole again. And that cruel woman who tried to destroy my sister's moment of peace ended up giving us something far more valuable, the reminder that we are never alone in our struggles, and that sometimes, help arrives at exactly the right time.